384-2191.
It is the Insight program for the first day of July 2021. June is gone, so is the first half of the year. Wow.
Incredible. It goes so fast, doesn't it?
Isn't that amazing?
Well, it is. And, we look forward in this part of the country to summer, and yet it's 90 days. So you look up and it's July 1st, and you realize that one-third of it is over, and makes you really want to crank up those plans to get to the lake, get to camping, or whatever you do.
All right. Well, we'll do. That's the show. We'll see you later. Oh, wait a minute.
We have a show to do.
Oh, we got to finish the show.
We do.
Yeah, we got to finish the show, the program. Good morning. Welcome to Insight. Again, on this July 1st, Mike Warren back with you. And City Administrator Steve Barg is on the program today. We had to kind of switch things around. Normally, this is the first Friday of the month show, but we're doing it a day early. So glad you could join us here. And there is, I want to say, a lot going on. There is, but there isn't. You know what I mean? And it seems as though we've just finished. I was thinking about this morning. Okay, here we are in July. It was about a year ago, when we started running into some issues with, at the police department, with the chief, and then from there it just was like, wow, the levee broke, and it was one thing after another for the next, it seemed, 11 months or so, and here we are a year later, removed from most of that.
Well, yeah, true. Although this month that just passed, June, we did get the ruling on the arbitration case with the former police officer. So I mean, it's some of the things we've been dealing with for the past a year or more really just are not fully done, but I think they're starting to wind down, and hopefully we'll be able to get on to other business.
Right. So again, we're still dealing with some of that, but not as much as it had been here the past year, but still a lot going on. So there hasn't been a lot of activity in terms of council meetings, things of that nature the last couple weeks or so.
Yeah, the agendas have been fairly light, and I think the length of those meetings, Mike, has been kind of affected by the fact we've had fewer people at the podium under public comment. So, and we welcome public comment when anybody wants to come and speak to the council. But our last couple of meetings have been done in an hour, maybe a little bit more, that kind of thing, which is not common for us.
Right. No, you're anything but common. We've been almost setting records lately with some long meetings and hearings and special council meetings and all kinds of stuff. It seemed, I remember the month, let's see here, from the start of the year, or from about the start of the year, maybe mid-January, late January, through... was it through March, maybe?
Yeah. There
was either a regular or a special council meeting every Tuesday for 3 months in a row or something like that, wasn't there?
Yeah, we had a lot. And then, of course, the hearing with the former mayor. That was a couple of special meetings. And, there's a thing on the end of the agenda that says items for future agendas. You've probably seen this. It's right before adjournment. And usually you might get a member of the council saying, I've got an idea. Could we talk about this? We had at least 2, if not more, meetings during the first 3 or 4 months of this year where somebody kind of jokingly said, I've got an agenda for future agendas, or an item. How about shorter agendas?
Yeah.
And, truthfully, Mike, during those meetings, it wasn't always that the agenda was that long if you look at it on paper, but the items were fairly meaty and the issues were fairly large. So we had meetings that went 3.5 to 4 hours with closed session. That's pretty long.
Yeah, you're right about that. And 3 and 4 plus hour evenings sometimes. And when you mix in, I know there were some nights where they had other meetings prior to the regular council meeting. Yep. And so they get there at 5:30 and go till 10 o'clock or whatever. There were some long nights there for a while.
There were. And if you notice that people keep an eye on our meetings, we sometimes provide a little bit of food for the council, and they might be wondering why we do that. But I'll tell you, if you're coming from work or some other place and you come in at 5 and you're still there at 10, you're probably going to be fairly grumpy, and it's hard to make good decisions when you feel that way. So we've always tried to provide something for them to be able to eat during a break or at their tables to make sure that they get nourishment for those long nights.
Yeah, half the council, 5 of 10, are still they're working stiffs like the rest of us. They're not retired like the other half. I think 5 are retired and 5 are not. 5 are working business professionals still working.
Yeah, and so we figure if we ask people to come in at 5 o'clock and be there till 9 or 10, it really does make sense for us if we want to have their full attention, their full participation, to make sure they've got something to eat during that long night. Because 4 or 5 hours to spend in meetings consecutively is quite a task.
Yeah, and missing dinner at home, so you got to get it somewhere.
Yep.
You mentioned that agenda item that was called, what was it, future...
Items for future agendas.
Items for future agendas, yes. One of those items will be coming up on a future agenda, meaning I believe the 13th of July, the next regular council meeting. This is something that came out of the hearings regarding the former mayor now. And that was this issue of, well, I'll let you take us through it. The council is going to get a presentation on the 13th on basically what its form of government, or the current form of government, and maybe what else is out there, what we could do differently, maybe explain what's going to be happening on the 13th and kind of where this idea or topic came from.
Yeah, it did come from the follow-up to the hearings with former Mayor McManus when we talked about whether or not to have a special election for a new mayor, maybe have the council take applications and appoint a new mayor, or to let the council president kind of ride it out until the next regular election in April of 2022. And as you remember, the council decided they'd just stay with the council president until the next scheduled election. But it was brought up at that time, our form of government, we've had it for probably forever. Is it the only one? Are there other forms of government? Because we know that in, for example, our neighboring cities of Rapids, Point, and Wausau, they don't even have a city administrator. Well, what form of government do they have? How about other cities across Wisconsin? And there are several different varieties that cities have chosen to use. And so it was thought that this would be a good time now, not that there's any predisposition towards something, but we take a look at not just what we have weak mayor, but also strong mayor, council manager, anything else that cities have available in their toolbox, talk about the pros and cons, and get a sense if they want to look at something different over time. Now, depending upon what they would do, it might involve, a charter ordinance, a referendum, whatever. But just to get a sense of what the positives and negatives are about each form, and to understand it, because there are differences. They're not all the same by any means.
So what will the council hear on the 13th?
Well, we're pretty honored. I don't think that the average listener probably will think much of this like I do, but we're getting the top 2 individuals from the League of Wisconsin Municipalities, and they're coming in person. The Executive Director, Jerry Duchesne, and the Assistant Director, Kurt Watinsky. These are big hitters. These are the folks every day that are lobbying with legislators, talking with them, trying to help us get the best laws we can for municipalities, doing any number of things on behalf of cities and villages. And I said they could come, participate by Zoom, and they said, no, we're trying to get out and be seen more and be interacting with leaders in communities. So they'll come here. They're going to make a PowerPoint presentation. They're going to walk through this various forms, hopefully getting council to understand each one, how it works, and then talking about, again, the pros and cons of each one, maybe talk about how many cities and villages use each one. I'm told that the council manager form is used by about 20 cities across Wisconsin. And, how about how many are used by strong mayor and weak mayor. And just talk about some of the experiences that they've seen, maybe some of the good experiences and bad experiences they've heard about, and then just answer questions. You look at our neighbors, like I said, a lot of them have other forms. Well, why? And does it seem to be beneficial? Would there be an opportunity for us, or do we like what we have today when you look at the list of things that we do?
So we have a weak mayor, strong council form of government. Meaning, basically, the mayor does not run the day-to-day operations of the city, does not write an annual city budget, nothing like that, which that position does in many communities, including the ones that surround us, right?
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, that person is effectively the leader. That's why they don't have a city administrator. The mayor is the day-to-day operations person as well. And, the weak mayor, sometimes, again, I think you and I have talked about this before, it sounds like the person is weak. Yeah. It's not about the person. It's about the formal authority. Yeah. And in Marshfield, Mike, the mayor can, veto motions made by the council, but that can be overridden by a 2/3 vote. They certainly run the meetings. They sign official documents. They represent the city at various functions. But they don't have that authority that, for example, the mayor in Wisconsin Rapids or Stevens Point has. It's a very different position. And so, again, it's about the formal level of authority.
Right. We have, then on top of that, we have your position, the city administrator, a position that the city implemented, I want to say, late 80s, I believe.
Yeah, I've been told it's been about 3 decades or maybe a little more, something like that.
Yep, yeah, a little over 30 years now, where basically you are the sort of the day-to-day manager of the city.
Yeah, and of course, manager technically means something different. You'll hear that on July 13th, because in the council manager form of government, the manager has a little bit more authority, can hire and fire department heads without any approval by the council, oftentimes can spend greater amounts of money without approval. I don't have it all at my fingertips right now, Mike, but it's a similar position, certainly.
Okay. So even manager is different than administrator. I mean, it gets that detailed.
It is. In the council manager form of government, the person in my position who would be called a city manager does have a somewhat greater level of formal authority at their fingertips. Now, admittedly, I'm not. Somebody might think I'm aspiring to this myself. I'm not sure if I feel one is better than the other among these forms of government. And I really want the council's input on a lot of things that I do now that perhaps as a manager I wouldn't need to get their blessing. But I see it a couple different ways.
Well, where this comes from is, again, the whole situation we went through with the former mayor, and during those hearings, which, again, led to the mayor's removal. And the council, I think somebody on the council at that time said, well, do we even need a mayor? Right? And that's where this comes from. Do we even need this mayor? And what else is out there in terms of forms of government? So maybe, I don't know, maybe as if to say we can avoid this situation in the future by just getting rid of the position. That's kind of where this came from, right?
Yeah, to some degree. I guess that was part of it, certainly. One of the conversations that's come as a part of this, Mike, is what does the mayor do? What's expected in the mayor? And we see that now with Council President Nick Paschal, because he's taken on some things that he's not required to do. He's holding office hours at City Hall for staff and citizens, at least limited, and he's attending maybe some functions and stuff. I can't stress this enough when people are listening to us right now and thinking, well, yeah, why do we have a mayor if they just run the meetings and sign official documents? The biggest role of a mayor in a weak mayor form of government is that consensus building leader, that person who can sit down with people from other communities, with city staff leaders, try and get some key council people involved at the right time, and fashion direction and lead the troops. It's not marching up San Juan Hill with Teddy Roosevelt where he says charge and everybody follows or they're in big trouble. It's more of a position that you form yourself when you get that respect and you really work with people to say that, hey, look, we need to go somewhere. How do we get there? Much more than having formal authority. I write a memo and it all happens tomorrow. Right.
It's almost kind of like a mediator. You're bringing sides together. I had one former mayor call it, I'm basically a glorified marriage counselor at times. That's how I feel, because you're trying to bring different sides, points of view together, and to kind of, and not only that, to keep any discussion or debate sort of civil and keep it on track, and not get too off base and off topic, and you're trying to mediate council meetings at times, that sort of thing as well.
Yeah.
Arbitrator.
I agree. I mean, it's multiple roles. It just, you don't look at state statute and see these.
Yeah.
It doesn't say that you're going to be mediating in state statute. It just really lists the formalities of the position. But there's so much more to that. I'm very grateful to Nick for doing the things he is doing beyond what he has to. And, maybe we can talk about that, because it looks like there's going to be an agenda item coming up soon about maybe giving him a little bit more pay for what he's doing, because he really has gone beyond what's expected of him or required. But it'll be an interesting conversation on July 13th and a good presentation by the league.
Okay. Anything more on that before we move off of that topic?
No, except to say that I think the public will see this. It won't happen in one meeting. They won't come out of the 13th and announce that, hey, hey, starting tomorrow we're having a new form of government. There's a charter ordinance required, I believe, and some other things. So if they decide they want to look at another process or another form of government, it will have to unfold over time.
I was going to say, that's a good point. Making that change would not be an easy one.
No, and it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Honestly, if you have an established form of government that the public is used to, it shouldn't be that you vote on Tuesday night and then you wake up on Wednesday morning and find that, can I talk to the mayor? We don't have one. We decided last night not to do that. And the people are thinking, last night you decided not to do that. Why didn't I hear about this? You don't change forms of government like that.
Okay. All right. We've got some other things we want to get to, and we'll figure out what that is when we take a break. We're winging it, right? Yeah. No, we have some ideas. We got a list. We've got a sticky note when there's official government sticky note involved. So we're ready, right? We came with both barrels loaded, so we're ready to fire away on these topics. So we'll just take a time out. If people do have a question or concerns, Steve, they can call the program, right?
Oh, on anything, regardless of whether or not it's a topic that we're addressing.
Oh, okay. Very good. So if there's a concern in their neighborhood or something, give us a call here at Insight 384-2191 and call Barb out front. She'll patch you through to the studio and we'll go from there. 10:21, more of our Insight program coming up after this.
I'm excited to announce the opening of Vandehay Waters Aquatic Center. It'll be opening on Friday, July 23rd at 3 p.m. We'll have the slides open, diving board, climbing wall, lazy river, the children's play area, basketball, and full concessions. Come out and join us on Friday, July 23rd at 3 p.m. We will be having a ribbon cutting that same day at 11 a.m. We'll ask the public to join us as we cut the ribbon, opening up our new aquatic center.
Right, that means, when we hear the ukulele, it means time to grab more coffee.
There you go. There you go.
Time to get coffee buzz going. Here on the Insight program for this 1st of July already, 2021. The City Administrator Steve Barg with us. I'm Mike Warren. And we are covering topics in the city of Marshfield here on normally what would be the first Friday of the month, but now we're doing the first Thursday. No, just this week only, because we switched some things around, so we're doing something else tomorrow, and moved Steve up by one day, so glad he could join us. And if you've got a concern, question, comment, what have you, 384-2191, call the front desk and they'll patch you through to the studio. Wanted to expand on the topic we just got done talking about, too, and that being the form of government presentation coming up on the 13th. And then you had said something about Nick Paschal, the current council president, who is not acting mayor officially, or how are we doing this now? Not interim mayor or anything like that?
No, and if you remember his predecessor, Tom Witzel, who filled in for a little while, he wanted it made clear, too, that he didn't want to be thought of as acting mayor, just council president. Now, we have had situations already, and Nick has certainly followed through with this, where certain official documents had to be signed by the acting mayor, borrowing money on the bonding resolutions. They wouldn't accept council president. They needed it to say acting mayor to show that level of authority. But for the most part, we're referring to him as council president. I think that's what he wants, and that's what the intent was, even if certain times, he is acting in that role.
Okay. And there will be, on the heels of that now, having said that, there will be, some corresponding compensation to go along with more duties for the council president. I mean, aldermen do get paid, and they all get paid the same. But this will be this is kind of a little different situation that may change here coming up.
Yeah, the council president has always gotten paid a little bit more than the rest of the council, based on the fact that it's assumed that a couple times a year that he or she will fill in for the mayor, run a meeting, have to do something when the mayor's on vacation, that type of thing. So it's nominal. And so that's always been what we do. But now I think members of the council, at least a couple of them, I think, are talking about this, and it was brought to my attention. If Nick's going to do this for 12 months, okay, and he's already, made it clear that he wants to do a little bit more than the basics. He's having office hours, and I encourage people to write this down, from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Tuesdays. A 3-hour block from 10 to 1. He's willing to meet with citizens and staff. certainly you can contact me or contact Amy, our administrative specialist, to make an appointment time if that works. But you might walk in and find him free anyway. And he's willing to do some more things. But the question is, with him being willing to do a few more things, which is great, and with it being 12 months instead of, just where you fill in twice a year, is it worthy of additional compensation? And it's being suggested to me that it ought to be put on the Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee agenda. So, Mike, what comes out tomorrow on that agenda for July 6th, you will see this item, possible compensation addition for the council president.
Okay, and then that would go to council for the July 13th meeting?
That is correct. If they make a recommendation, it would go to the 13th. And, I think there's merit to it. I'm not sure you can always argue about how much additional compensation is fair, given that he's not intending to do the full depth and breadth of the mayor position. But I think it's worth talking about because he's taken on a significant role for the city and he's putting in extra effort.
Yeah, certainly is. Okay. All right. Certainly a lot of buzz these days in the city of Marshfield about the Vandahay Waters Outdoor Aquatic Center, is it? Or park? Or what are we calling
some of us just call it Vandahay Waters, but it's an aquatic center.
Okay.
And there is tremendous buzz. I was at an event last night related to church, and the first question I was asked by the first adult that saw me, when is this thing going to open up? Aren't I off the clock now? No, I guess I'm not off the clock.
Right.
But you're right, there's a lot of buzz, and I don't know if we talked about this the last time we were together, Mike, but then there's been this issue, I think you've heard about it, even at a council meeting, getting plaster, and you say getting plaster, how can that slow it down? But there's these pieces that all have to be in place to finish the project before they can open. And we've been looking at a date, maybe the middle of July or a little later, at noon today, okay? I feel like it's the Academy Awards. Like we're going to have a drum roll. But at noon today, covered right here on WDLB, probably soon after that, there's going to be an announcement made about the start date, the actual grand opening for this facility. And there are people that are just like dying waiting to hear this because, like you said, this weekend it's 90 degrees.
Yeah, right.
And a typical 4th of July weekend, people want to get out and use this amenity. So by later today, hopefully people listening to us right now will hear that first date that it's going to be open.
Mm-hmm. In the meantime, the workers are down there literally getting plastered. Oh, no, wait.
Don't start that rumor, okay?
All right.
Somebody might have tuned in for 30 seconds and said,
and all they heard was plaster. And we're like, wait, what?
No wonder city government is struggling.
Yeah, we're bogged down in all the plaster. But no, they got plaster. It's a big part, obviously, of a building project, and things were kind of backed up because of pandemic stuff, and you couldn't get a lot of this stuff. It's crazy to now look at, the ramifications of a pandemic and things you wouldn't even think would be an issue. You can't just go down and buy some plaster when you need it.
No, in fact, there's a big, I think, growth in terms of the demand for building supplies, for labor. I mean, people are, maybe it's pent-up demand. I don't know what it is, but it's making the costs go up, and it's also making the some of the product be delayed a little bit.
Just try to buy an appliance.
Yeah.
And they're just getting caught up.
Yep. So. And I know some people listening to us right now, Mike, are going to think, gosh, if we don't open until a ways into July, and, it's a short summer, as we said earlier, here in Wisconsin,
right.
We're not going to get as much use out of it this year as we want. We're not happy about that. We wish we'd opened earlier. We're doing everything we can. And we think that when you go out there and see this place and start using it, all that's going to fade away, and you're just going to love the new. Honestly, this is what people have waited for. I came here in 2011, and back then, 10 years ago, there was talk about, we got to replace Hefco Pool. It's the oldest pool in the state of Wisconsin. When can we? And here we are on the threshold of it.
Yeah. Well, it's sort of like when you close a road, forever.
Yeah.
It's like when we did, the major reconstructions of Central, North Central, and even downtown Central. Remember when downtown we ripped it up and closed the whole thing and shut it down, and it, seemingly takes forever. And then once it's open and running, it's like, hardly remember it was ever closed.
Right.
So.
Right. I cannot give enough kudos, and I need to take this opportunity to Justin Casperson, our Parks and Recreation Director, all the people involved, the contractors, Bozen, and the donors, the people, obviously Vandahay family, but all the people who have contributed money for this project, who've been on committees to try and bring it to fruition. Thank you a million times over.
Yeah, you're right. On behalf of a grateful community.
Yeah.
Because this is going to be, it's Well, you mentioned church before, It's like, I always think of that at church, you go to church and like 5% of the people do 100% of the work and the other 95 are just, takers. And they come there and take and not really give. They just come and sit there and take in what's offered to them. And a few, handful of people are putting it on for them, so to speak.
Yeah, sometimes those other people are demanding and wonder why it's not sooner, even though they're not part of it.
Exactly. And not to say, well, that's not good, you don't get to use it if you weren't a part. That's not what we're saying. We're just saying that's the reality of it.
Right,
so.
Right. And I know that this is kind of like the Academy Awards. Whenever you start saying I want to, no, really, whenever you start saying I want to thank people, you forget people.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
And I know I'm still going to forget people, but I want to tack on the fundraising committee.
Yeah.
Bob McManus and his wife, Cara, were the campaign chair people. Everybody on the committee, all the folks who went out and just kept pushing it. There was a thought when we got into the pandemic that, contributions were going to dry up. Are we going to get to the finish line? Everybody had this vision. We need to get to the finish line. They pursued, and we are very close.
And it's pretty bad when the city administrator is getting cornered at church, saying, when's this thing going to open up? And then you go, look, pastor, calm down and take the floaties off, would you please, before you do your sermon?
I take it as I take it as a real positive, though, that people are that excited that they want to know the opening date. It shows how much enthusiasm there is for the project.
Yeah, a lot of enthusiasm. So as my grandmother would say, pert near. We're pert near there.
Pert near there.
Pert near there.
I like that one.
It's a contraction for pretty near. I guess that's Spencer talk. Pert near. We're pert near there. So, we'll find out later today when this thing is going to open up. All right. Beyond that, where do you want to go next? There's a couple of issues, and I'll kind of let you direct the discussion because I always try to prioritize, and I should never do that because it's all important, But like, for instance, I always look at it from, would I write a story on this, and would the average listener even care about this? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Does John Q. public or taxpayer want to know? Do they need to know about this? So I won't try to prioritize. You've got a list here. Where do you want to go to next?
Why don't I jump into housing? And that will encompass that'll encompass two of the things that I put on the list.
Okay.
First of all, an update on the city housing subdivision. The Board of Public Works on Tuesday, July 6th at 5:30 will be reviewing the bids for the infrastructure for that project. And again, for those who don't know, it's on the south side of 5th Street on the west end, right in that area of Birch over there, just west of Lincoln. Okay. 23 single-family lots. Most have been pre-sold, or many have been pre-sold. More than half have been pre-sold at this point, with the great work of our Development Services Director, Josh Miller, leading the charge. But now we had to bid out the sewer, water, and street. And you say, okay, big deal. Why is that exciting? Because costs have been going higher in some projects that we've heard about around the state and around central Wisconsin. And the concern was, what if the numbers come in higher than expected? Well, I don't want to reveal too much, but I'm told we opened the bids earlier this week. They're still going through them. They're still reviewing them to make sure that they're accurate and complete. But it does appear that the low bid that the staff will be bringing to the Board of Public Works meeting looks very favorable. And if the board agrees and is willing to sign off on that, and the council as well, that is really a huge step toward getting this project moving to the next level.
Creating more housing. This would be housing that is, we have found out, in great demand. It's on the upper end of the housing market. We're talking homes in that $400,000 range. And again, we're told people have not taken jobs here.
Right.
They have gone elsewhere. They have not, come here to live. Because they can't find, those are houses, those are in demand big time here in Marshfield, right?
Yeah, if you remember back in one of the May meetings, Mike, we had several people at the podium encouraging the city to do this. One was a realtor, one was a business leader, one was an HR director in one of our bigger employers, the clinic, and they all said the same kind of thing. People want to come here, we want to expand, we want to grow, but where are people going to live? And this, by being in that 350 to 400 range, it's not for everybody, but it's one area that we've been told that we are short, and we're going to keep looking at more housing, and I'm going to get to that in just a second.
Okay.
We want, and I think I've said this before, but it's worth repeating, we want to have housing opportunities for all times of your life. You're looking for that first home. You're looking to upgrade because you're having a family. You're moving up in your career. Now you're on the empty nester side. You may be looking to scale down a little bit. We want to have these opportunities. And what we've had for the last few years, Mike, we've worked so hard and so successfully on rental housing. We've partnered with the private sector to get several developments behind Walmart, on Old Highway 10, Heritage Drive, and other places over by the high school to get hundreds and hundreds of new, good rental housing units. Well, we've probably met that demand now. And now our problem is that we only have scatterings of single-family lots, one here, one there, but not much organized in terms of a nice new development. So we think this will be a big piece of it. The next one we'll talk about in a minute is TIF District 13, and that's also an opportunity. And those homes will likely be of a lesser value than the ones we just talked about.
Okay. So the new housing development, or I guess subdivision, is moving forward next couple weeks?
Yeah, again, and I don't want to get ahead of myself because staff hasn't finished a report to bring to the Board of Public Works. But if, in fact, it pans out as it looks right now that the bids are favorable, hopefully the board will approve it and the council on the 13th will approve it, and then we can get going on building the infrastructure for the project. That's a big piece because, like I said, the cost overruns we've heard have been maybe happening in other places. The goal then will remain, by late October, all the infrastructure is in the ground, street, sewer, water, everything, and we're ready to sell the lots, for real, as opposed to just the pre-sale. These pre-sale agreements are significant, but we're going to be at that point in late October of actually signing on the dotted line for people to buy and build. And and that'll be a really great day.
So who buys the lots? Do the homeowners themselves buy the lots right away, or do these contractors that are going to be building the homes, do they buy the lots up front and then turn around and sell the lots and the home to the new homeowners? How does this process work?
My understanding is both are possible, but what we're seeing in large part, I think, is builders, people who are going to build a home for someone coming forward and talking to Josh and working out some of the details. But I believe it can go either way. We've been approached by individuals certainly as well. Okay.
Yeah. And as I understand it, you talk demand, supply and demand. You're supplying the lots and they have demanded them, right? I mean, the response so far has been tremendous.
It really has. It's been very strong, and it hasn't even really been advertised that much yet. As word has gotten out, people have come forward. I want to say one more thing too, Mike. Sometimes people wonder how government does when we act like a business. They look at us and they go, well, gosh, this isn't really your thing. You're doing a housing subdivision. Do you have all the I's dotted and T's crossed? These agreements that we're signing, the pre-sale agreements and then the final agreements with these people, have conditions. They have requirements. You must build a house of a certain size and you build it within a certain time frame. We're not going to suddenly wake up and find out that this was ill-founded and we don't get the tax revenue that we expected. So there are conditions to make sure that certain criteria are met. We're not just handing it off and saying, well, enjoy the lot and put up a doghouse or something.
Right.
These are stipulated to make sure that we get what we're looking for.
And what? I understand, over half have been... people have spoken for over half these lots already?
Yeah, pre-sale where they're willing to put some money down, sign an agreement that they want to execute with the city. And, they have certain lots they've already kind of pegged out as ones that they'd like to buy and build on.
So basically the city puts the infrastructure in up front, but the city is not building homes. These are contractors that will get this work, and much needed work, right? Home builders in this area that are going to be putting up these homes.
Right, which is good for everybody because it employs people, it provides wages and all those kind of things to people in our community. Yeah. But I'm glad you said that because it still comes up once in a while when people hear city housing stuff. okay, how far is the city going? And I know they really don't believe that public works employees are out there with 2x4s, but our purpose is to buy the land and to kind of lead the charge and set the sale prices and get building going. It's understood that without some assistance, it's hard to get these developments off the ground. We're trying to provide that impetus.
Right. You're not competing with builder. People have said, why would they compete with these home builders?
No,
these same home builders have come to the city and have said, you got to help us. We cannot afford to do this on our own. We can't put in the infrastructure.
No.
It's too expensive. Why do you think there haven't been any new homes in a while or subdivisions in a while in the city? We can't afford to do it. So the builders, who some, think, the city is competing with, it's just the opposite. They have gone to the city and said, would you help us out? We need some help getting these housing developments going.
That's a really great point, because I think a lot of people, and I'm one of them, look to see if the city is crossing over into an area we don't belong in.
Right.
The private sector has the large role in terms of economic development. So no, we're not trying to compete with anybody, drive anybody out of business, or anything like that. We're trying to partner, and you're exactly right with what you say. They've been asking for it. They're the ones who are going to be looking to get these lots. It's all good.
Yeah, I mean, years ago, I had an uncle of mine put in a little housing. He did a little housing thing, development, and couldn't do it, and said, thank goodness the city came along when they did and helped me get this thing going, and then put in the houses or whatever. So, yeah. It's a great thing. Win-win.
Yeah.
Now, addressing anything else on that?
Well, no, except maybe do you want to dovetail onto the other project?
I was going to go too. Now we're talking high-end homes again on the Daniels
correct.
subdivision. I
Correct.
guess that's the owner of the property that sold it to the city or whatever.
Yes.
But
correct. Correct.
They sell the property. So that subdivision for kind of the higher end, $350,000, $400,000 homes, maybe even higher. But there is going to be, and there is demand for other housing, sort of that middle range income housing. And I understand the city is taking some steps to address that part of the housing market as well, right?
Absolutely. A few years ago we had a study done, and it was identified that the real range we were missing out on that people wanted was $125,000 to $200,000. Well, you can't really build a house for under $200,000. That's been said from the podium, I think, a number of times now by people in the trade. But what this is going to be is along either side of Veterans Parkway in the southeast part of town, sort of pretty close to a development now called Green Acres, which is on the west side along 21st Street. But we're looking at it's a mixed-use TIF district. Now, a mixed-use TIF district is something the state authorized years ago to say, okay, usually TIF districts are more industrial and commercial, not housing. But you know what? We'll let you combine it and have a piece of it be residential if the majority is something else. So what we're doing along that corridor is on either side of Veterans Parkway, putting some properties into this district for both industrial on one side, on the east side, and residential more on the west side. But what we're going to get out of this is potentially up to 60 single-family lots for development on that west side of Veterans Parkway, and these would be more for that maybe in the 200-something range. And more affordable for people who probably couldn't compete maybe for the ones over on the west end. Nothing's in place right now. We have talked to somebody who's interested, but there's nothing formal approved or agreed upon. But if we can get this in place, Mike, by the end of September, which is what it looks like, as we dovetail into 2022, we see a real opportunity to see upwards of possibly, at the maximum, 60 new family lots. Picture if we had even close to that, plus the 23, we could take this shortfall that we've had and suddenly be telling the world we've got 70 or 80 more lots to build on. That would be a really good step to trying to fill this void.
Huge. And where is this one again?
It's on the west side of, I don't have a map in front of me right now, but on the west side of Veterans Parkway, in that southeast part of the town as you're headed out toward Highway 10, to go to Point and beyond.
Okay, so like just before you get to that new Quick Trip that's out there?
Oh, yeah.
Somewhere in there?
Yeah, farther north than that. But in
farther north,
but
okay.
But in that corner of town.
Okay.
And in what would I think be some of the area if it had a street name like 25th or somewhere like 21st, 25th. that general vicinity. And, it would be a very appropriate place, we think, for this kind of housing. And it would really help fill a demand if we could get it going.
And there would be some new commercial development as well?
Commercial and industrial development under this TIF district would also be possible. Now, residential can only be 35% of the total property. So that means the lion's share of it has to be for industrial or commercial purposes. And we have some opportunities there. There's some businesses down in that general area of the corridor of Veterans Parkway that are interested in looking at expansion, and they might need infrastructure. They might need some other assistance. We can help spur that on as well.
Okay. And now I just want to try to do this too, a little education in terms of when we hear this term TIF.
Yeah.
It's a TIF district, and people are going, what does he keep saying? He's saying a TIF? Who's TIF? And why does she own all this property in the city of Marshfield? That is a funding mechanism, if I'm trying to understand this correctly now. TIF is a funding, it stands for Tax Incremental Financing. So basically, the state allows these TIF districts, so they say, okay, cities, you can use this funding mechanism to basically put in all this stuff. Do this new housing development, do these new commercial developments, and then you'll get paid back basically through the tax, the increments on the new tax base that those developments create. Is that even close?
Yeah, it is. I mean, you start out with a base value, and the typical thing people talk about is greenfield development, although that's not always the case. And the property has a value of whatever it is, and the city and the county and the state, school district, tech college, everybody gets their share of the tax revenue. Yeah. And by declaring a TIF district, the city then can expend monies on infrastructure or development grants or whatever to produce tax base, and the city, this is simplistic now, the city can collect those revenues, the total amount of those additional revenues, until such time as we've paid off our debt. So when somebody builds in a TIF district, that improvement, that home or that commercial building, we get the entire 25 mills, roughly, that would have otherwise gone to the school district and others for a period of time until we can recoup our investment. And then everything gets back shared with everyone after that. So it's a financing tool. Since the state of Wisconsin doesn't have what other states, including Illinois, have, which is direct tax relief. It's the best financing tool that we can offer to developers.
It has gotten a lot in this city done.
It really has. It has. I mean, you look at some of the downtown TIF district, District 4, the business and industrial park, PCA, prevention genetics, all the things that have happened. Some might have happened on their own, but many of them would not happen without a financing mechanism.
And we need the financing mechanism because, otherwise, how else do you get these kinds of things done? You just straight borrowing, and it's too expensive, and then there's finance charges and all that kind of stuff, right? I mean, what's the difference?
It is, and people want to build. We have people who want to build commercial and industrial businesses and develop housing subdivisions, but the idea of doing everything yourself is daunting. The idea that you're going to put in the roads yourself, you're going to do all these things, I mean, what you need to do is have a mechanism to get to the point where it's development ready, and that's where TIF usually comes in.
Okay. Anything else on
I don't
that?
think so on that, no.
Okay. So now we have, there have been a couple of interesting, zoning issues recently come before the city, and normally we don't, these aren't too, these aren't headline-grabbing sorts of things when somebody requests a zoning change for a property or something, but every once in a while, zoning issues get some attention because they might set a precedent or something for certain types of uses, or maybe might set a citywide precedent if we do it here. They're going to want to do it over there, that kind of thing. There have been some really interesting couple of zoning issues lately.
There have, and one of the interesting parts of it has been without a mayor, we haven't had someone to break the tie. And the one that I was going to speak about today is on East 21st Street, 307, and it was denied, but the vote was 5-5. And if we'd had a mayor, that mayor could have broken the tie potentially in favor. But what happened there was, the city wants to see more housing. That's what we've been talking about for the past 10 minutes. And there was somebody down on East 21st Street who wanted to have their property changed from single-family to two-family residential, wanted to put up a duplex or allow for that. And you say, well, okay, that's only one more housing unit, but we're looking to provide more housing opportunities. Well, you look at the surrounding area and you see if it works. There was some single family over here. There was some other types of two family or more family over here, and the staff presented it and said, we believe there's enough of a connection to the single family properties in this, abutting it over here to make an argument for it. And ultimately the council, after getting the referral from the Plan Commission, wasn't favorable. A lot of them felt like we were trying to get two-family housing in a place that really was a single-family neighborhood or should remain more single-family. So what's interesting is, I want listeners to understand that where we want to have more opportunities for people to live in our community, and this would have been one, to attract another family, they also are cognizant of the neighborhoods themselves and whether they might do something that would be detrimental to the surrounding properties. I'm not saying this would have been detrimental, but that was the assessment they had to make. And it's one of those 6 of one, half a dozen of another things when they look at these issues. So I hope people recognize that it's a struggle sometimes for our elected officials to weigh the greater good.
Interesting. Okay. The other one, and I'm not sure. Okay, anything more on that first?
No, I think that covers that.
I think the other one that came to mind, or that my mind recently, the one I noticed was, is it the Skywalk? Was it Skywalk issue? Yeah. We're going to get a third Skywalk at the medical complex?
Yep. Yeah, and there's been discussion about that. You say, well, okay, they're building it, so who cares? It's over the roadway. But because it goes over a city roadway, it's actually an encroachment into our right-of-way. So you have all those things come up. You say, well, should they have to pay us something for the right of having something over our right-of-way?
In our
airspace.
In our airspace over the street. Right.
And then you talk about these things that people never would envision happening. Like, what if something happens and something breaks and falls onto the right-of-way and hurts somebody? And you're thinking, when is that going to happen? But all those, we live in a litigation society, so everything about insurance and liability has to be covered. We've been having ongoing conversations with the Marshfield Clinic, and I think we're getting close to having some finality on a lease that will make that possible. But that's the gist of it.
Okay, and he can say no more because of it's all right.
Well,
I can't, it's all legalese and.
Well, and this has been in closed. This has been in closed session. When they vote, it'll ultimately be an open session.
Okay.
Sometimes closed session items are things I can talk about a little bit. I can't get too deep. Otherwise, I'd be violating the premise of us going to closed session. Mm-hmm. But, the issue here is kind of what it is. People hear that they're looking at a third Skywalk and wondering maybe why it's not happening sooner. Well, there are things that have to be looked at.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Zoning the air space above the street. It's a weird thought, and you think, well, I don't remember hearing about this when they did the first two. Yeah. Well, those were under a different set of rules, right? Zoning rules have changed since those have gone into place, correct?
Yeah. There are so many things, and we updated the zoning code a while ago. Right. We'll probably have to update it again. Yeah. As technology improves, as other things improve, things you never would have anticipated. Think about zoning law back 40 years ago. I mean, there weren't cell towers. There weren't. It was a different environment.
Yeah, you got that right. So, simpler times.
Yep.
Oh, if only we could go back, right? Sometimes.
Harken back. Yep.
Okay. Now, the other thing I wanted to bring up here, we got just a few minutes left. This is something we talked about on our weekly program last weekend. You've had the first meeting of the pay compression team. So you're going to compress everyone's pay that works for the city of Marshfield
into one big salary, which I'm claiming for myself.
Yeah, There you go. Pay compression team. Why? What is it, and why do you have it?
Well, this is kind of an offshoot of the compensation discussion that went on the last couple of months about employees' pay. The realization that some departments, particularly police and fire, have situations where, because of union salaries, which oftentimes maybe go up more consistently than other pay because they're able to negotiate collectively, you say, well, okay, you want leaders to come forward. If you're a firefighter or a police officer, we want you to someday look to be a deputy chief or a lieutenant. Well, then you start looking at the salaries, and what happens if they start getting to the point where the gap between a lieutenant and a firefighter or police officer is smaller? Then you have people saying, you know what? I could aspire to that, but I'd have headaches. I'd get into political issues and struggles from the leadership level. I think I'm better off just to have $2,000 less pay and no headaches. And so we're trying to figure out a way to make sure that doesn't tighten more so that we have incentivizing opportunities for people who want to grow. And the goal of police and fire is to grow leaders from within. And sometimes you hire from outside, but you really want to have those top positions be something that you're growing and developing the people you've hired to raise up to that level. So you don't want to have that cut off by the fact that they don't see the pay as being all that much different for a management position versus what they're doing. So we're looking at ways, and we came up with some ideas we can talk about, nothing definite, but ways in which we can try and make sure that doesn't get any tighter. And the goal is by the end of summer, at least my goal is, to come back to the council with some recommendations. So we've got a couple of more meetings ahead of us.
Okay. I mean, anything, kind of sort of headline-ish coming out of that first meeting, or was it just sort of setting the ground rules and here are the things we're going to discuss in the upcoming months?
Well, we talked about some things that they want to see at the next meeting in terms of reports, in terms of financial reports, overtime reports, those kind of things. I think some of the members of the team, probably, we got 2 elected officials on the team, Mike, still maybe trying to come to grasp a little bit, how did this happen? What goes into the pay of a firefighter or police officer that may make them closer to the leadership positions than we realized. And but we really didn't get too far down the road. We just talked about things to look at, I think, for now.
Okay. All right. Anything else on that topic?
I don't think so. And, it's not as big as some topics that we cover as far as the public, but it's important. We want good fire and police departments. We don't want people disaffected by feeling like there's a roadblock to advancement.
Very true. Yeah, good point. All right. We got just a couple minutes left here. Anything else on your list?
Well, you're looking at it right now, and I'm not. I'm trying to think of what else might have been there.
Start of 2021 budget process?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be an interesting one. We're starting at the staff level now. Everybody probably remembers that we had a fairly significant tax rate increase last year. And we're thinking that was one time, although we've got to make sure we're keeping up with our costs. But it's going to be a challenging year again. The playing field hasn't really altered a lot, Mike. Costs are going up. Inflation is going up. I don't know if you've probably been reporting this and getting this from your national feed, but I think for the first 4 months of the year, it was already pointing toward maybe a 4% increase or something. And that's going to affect a lot of things, including how we look at budgeting for 2021. What can we count on for gas prices? What can we count on for the cost of supplies and equipment and road projects? That's still kind of up for grabs. So it's going to be another tough budget year. The council won't see and hear about this for a little while. It's at staff level. But we get into the fall, and I don't think it'll be as bad as last year because we had some catch-up to do last year.
Right.
But it will be challenging again.
One thing I was going to ask you about quick, and I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, but yesterday they debated this bill or whatever, I think it was a bill in Madison, repeal of the state's personal property tax.
Yeah.
Now, when we hear that, we think, well, how does that affect us? Well, doesn't this have to do with cities? I mean, right? What's the personal property tax? And if they repeal it, it's going to affect cities like Marshfield. It means less revenue, right?
Well, theoretically, it could. Now, here's the deal. I've been talking a lot with Tom Laux, our outstanding communications director, lately about the fact that this came up with the video service provider fee, where a couple of years ago, we always used to get 5% from Charter Communications as a franchise fee. The state started weeding us off, but they said, hey, we'll make up the difference. What you don't get from them, we'll make sure that you're made whole. Mike, they're saying the same thing about the personal property tax. If they do that, that's great. Whatever the city of Marshfield loses in terms of personal property taxes, if the state remits a payment that equals that, that's fine. And they're talking about that. The concern most cities and villages have is, will that be continuous? You have different legislatures change. Will we wake up in 2025 and someone says, you know what? We can't do that anymore. We're only going to reimburse you at 50% of the lost personal property tax. That's where it gets concerning. So we're following it closely because we wonder if the commitment will hold to the full offset payments. If it does, great. If it doesn't, we're going to have a problem because we get a lot of money from personal property tax.
And that covers what again? I mean, what is that? Or what?
What is it?
What is the what is it covering, or what? And when you get money from the state,
Well, it's all part of our general revenue.
just your right.
Just our general revenue, and but from commercial and industrial and other facilities, we get a lot of personal property tax revenue on their equipment and
I see.
and whatnot.
Okay, this is the equipment thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Not the building and land.
Right.
But the equipment and so again, people have talked about getting rid of this for a long time.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you, it's a very cumbersome thing for our assessor. But okay, getting rid of it is one thing. Loss of revenue is another. So if you're committed to the offset payments being full, you're going to find municipalities on board. If it's a possibility of it being weaned off over time, you're going to find some heartburn.
Yeah, and the idea is that you shouldn't have to be, these businesses shouldn't have to be paying taxes on things like desks and chairs and computers and other stuff forever.
Yeah, and there's states where they don't. There's states
Right.
where they don't have a personal property tax. So I understand that, and I understand how cumbersome it is even to file and to go through the process of having complaints and concerns discussed with the assessor. It's a matter of the fact that the tax revenue is needed by cities and villages, Mike, and we can't afford to see that go away.
Interesting stuff. Steve, as always, thank you for being here.
Thanks, Mike.
Certainly appreciate
it. Have a great
it.
4th of July weekend.
You as well. Keep all your fingers. All right. We'll
Sounds good.
Count them next month.
Sounds
here
good.
on the Insight program with City Administrator Steve Barg on AM 1450, FM 98.7, WDLB, Marshfield.